Angus is someone that I met at One New Heartbeat in facilitating and co-facilitating. We've co-facilitated with those that have been in prison, with children, not children, with young adults, shall I call them, the high school and college students. And um, we're opposites. We're kind of yin and yang, and we piggyback off of each other. And I find this man courageous, really, in his exploration of finding and being himself and accepting himself. And yeah, he's a heartfelt human being who's a peer. It's Angus.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. So all things considered equal, I'd like to introduce Jonathan.
Of course.
And I came prepared with a slide, so this should capture a little bit about what we are all about as well. So Jonathan, where do I even begin? So for myself, how I came to even be part of One New Heartbeat was that I live up in Ottawa, Canada, and during the COVID and all the changes, and when everything kind of got upset, I found myself really isolated, and I live with some wellness things that if I'm under great stress or distress because of the trauma that I've experienced in life, I can really be disconnected from the world around me. And so I ended up in these virtual circles where we were focusing on wellness recovery and action planning and self-determination. And this woman named Waynette saw something in me and invited me to the organization that she is a part of, and that's where I came to meet Jonathan. And for me, I showed up in those spaces many times before I felt even safe to open a door to who I am. But Jonathan was this voice and this just a light. I'm sure you know. And so over time, and over many hours of holding space with each other, I had an opportunity to go to California and obtain an advanced level facilitation that just it doesn't show up every day for everybody. It was such a moment in my own personal life of being able to do that and have that access. And then these photos represent kind of different parts of our personality, but they also represent the moment where me from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and Jonathan from California got to stand side by side. And I love these photos because personally, I love the first photo the most, the one where it looks like Jonathan's giving me side eye because he's only looking into the sun. But I feel like it captures half the looks I get from people half the time when I'm in different spaces, just because of who I am as a person, I guess, and the way that I connect and the style that I connect. So thank you, Jonathan, for that beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate this morning you saying, I have no idea what we talked about, what we're doing, or what we're presenting, because that's kind of us. That captures us at any given moment. But what I know the magic to be is that it's simply the act of getting together, showing up in these spaces, and then just seeing what comes up, and that's part of what we do as peer specialists, and that's part of what we do when we're dealing with, the youth. And, we also deal with some veterans who, they have very specific lived experiences and unique ones. But it's all really about trying to be as present and as available as possible. And then doing what we saw everybody demonstrate this morning, which is simply just being without judgment, simply just acknowledging and sharing space. So that's the good news. Nothing that we're going to do in this next little while is going to be something that is new to you. It's just going to be from our perspective. So just like we did this morning, we'd like to just check in again. We've all taken in the experience of our check-ins and the Tao, and we all took a little bit of a break to hit refresh so that we were available for this. So I'll just open the floor, and if anybody has an answer to the that first prompt, what's alive in you in this moment? And in the circles where we share space outside of this kind of grouping.
Angus, could you stop the screen share so we could see each other?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bear with me for 1 second. I was just going to say we're used to this format in this circle, but Jonathan and I also share space in other circles where this approach isn't as natural. So yeah, go ahead. Let's see there, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Angus. So I immediately have a response that so often in this circle and circles like this, we talk about the importance of being in the here and now and being mindful and being in the moment, and the present is all there is. And I haven't been here for 20 years or 30 years like some people. And this is the first time that I'm aware that we actually start the presentation with that very principle of course, we don't have to be in the moment in order to respond, but without an agenda, except whatever we are aware of in the moment as our starting point, seems like a wonderful fulfillment of that intention and a delicious opportunity to practice simply being. So I'm beginning to understand how it is that you impact people by who you are. So I'm in with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Would anybody else like to share what's happening right now for them? What's taking place in the moment? Yes, I see your hand, Diana.
This is such an interesting time because this book signing, this book launch was about wealth. And I find myself, I was a speaker there. And I started with saying that there are basically two kinds of wealth. There's wealth that fills up your bank account and wealth that fills up your heart. And I then spoke about heart wealth and what that is. And it felt like for the first time I was really speaking as my soul. And to be received for that was really something new. Heart wealth feels like a really important subject, and I'd love to hear other people's take on that as well.
I love
Patricia.
Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, just Patricia really shared that in what she was referring to when she acknowledged to the man that he had left some change. this heart wealth. You know, so the theme has been very alive this morning from the beginning.
Mhm. What I love is that idea, you know, Thomas sort of sharing about and this is, I'm paraphrasing and making connection, but just that idea of knowing, you know, what page we're starting on, like where we all are, and making those connections, and then just what was shared in terms of, you know, how do we define things? Because when I hear about a book of wealth, right, I immediately had what my interpretation was, and then felt it right in my heart, that idea of heart wealth, right? Because everything means different things to everybody, even though we have some common themes, right? I see an iPhone, which is ironic. I'm sure there's a person connected to that iPhone, but let's open the floor to you.
I'm going to take that as myself. This is Levita. I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, visiting my family. And I'm on my iPhone for the first time, so I don't know how any of this is working, but thank you for calling on me. I'm very grateful to be here and be a member of this group. And I really have tears, hon. Maybe I can't. I'm having to dig very deep in the heart category. I got to experience an aspect of my son last night that I hadn't anticipated and had never seen before. And he'll be 60 next year. And it was all I could do to stay put, not call an Uber or try and figure out how to change my plans to get back home. And I love him dearly. And I'm seeing the effects of long time alcoholism and how it affects the family, even when we're unaware of it. And this is clearly a secret that he has held very long and very deep. And his particular faith system identifies and projects, and there's a lot of fear around demons. And I've never spent this much time with them before, he and his wife and my extended family. So I'm getting a baptism in trying to set healthy boundaries for myself, as well as stay open in my heart and continue to be loving and kind. So I really appreciate this topic this morning. And thank you, everyone. If we will be remembered in the prayer circle, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Levita. I really appreciate all of what you said there. I appreciate the self-care that you're exercising. I appreciate the observance that you're making with your son. And yeah, wellness and addictions and all of those factors are pretty big factors in the realms that we experience these things in. So thank you for that. And then I see you're just listed as user. We'll hear from you, and then we can continue if that's okay.
Oh, this is Jenny. I don't know what it says, user. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today. I had the opportunity to spend a week with, 2 weeks with a dear friend that is like a sister, and I was so blessed to have that divine connection with her. We went to Mexico and we were like children in the water and picking up shells and so forth. But in talking with her, she has a brother who is a retired colonel, And he was very happy and successful in the Middle East as an attaché, diplomatic attaché. And in asking about her brother, she told me that, well, he retired, divorced, alone in Pennsylvania, drinking. And that I have this desire to have him connect with you somehow. And how would this fine man can connect with you? You have any link that I can share with my friend? Because I met him years ago, and you know, he has no one really right now. And if you can share how he can connect with you or the organization, an opportunity for him to shift to radical self-care.
Thank you, Jenny. So I believe that everybody would have gotten an email with an introduction for me as well, and for Jonathan. So I can be reached that way, but I can also, by the end of today's session, I'll put my email in the chat box if anybody would like to connect or needs support or needs support around a friend who needs support. That's kind of the, I have a lot of experience with that, so, and Jonathan as well. Thank you.
So the next part of this, Sarah, would you pick a number between 1 and let's say 80?
46.
Okay. And Angus is going to put up 46 with the Tao Te Ching and share it. We'll share it. And then let's explore how it touches you. What comes up for you in the moment? Just taking it in. And you may go, it doesn't matter where you go with it. You can share with Dana. Dana is, you have resource here. You can go whatever, however, wherever, and however it touches you.
"46. When the Tao rules, people trust nature to flow from their hearts. Swift horses fertilize the pastures. Dogs serve as faithful companions. When the Tao subsides, people sacrifice, looking to gain edge. Breeding horses for conflict and competition is lucrative. Dogs guard the gates. When civilization expresses the Tao, harmony is resonant. People create, supporting one another with their efforts, contributing to existence the way nature does, where each being complements all others. When civilization runs counter to the Tao, caution and mistrust proliferate. Industries retool for conflict. People stockpile resources. When fear takes hold, divisions emerge. Fences turn into walls. Bridges collapse. There is nothing more destructive to the earth than harvesting fear. Nothing more harmful to a culture than foisting fear upon others. Nothing more immoral to the soul than teaching fear to children. There is no greater tragedy than losing the Tao. No greater misfortune than believing desires cure fear. No greater waste than a lack of sufficiency. Nothing pulls people away from the Tao as easily as desire. Nothing pulls people toward the Tao as easily as love. When one learns to see through fear, the way becomes evident. Love and trust come forth. Wherever love is practiced, it is safe.
I just have a couple of prompts to help support us in making connections with that. Bear with me here.
47.
So I'll just put in the chat a couple of prompts, and again, it's like whatever's coming up, we're happy to just receive whatever's showing up for folks. But if you need some support in kind of prompting or guiding your reflections, I shared something that resonates with me is a personal reflection I'm having is, and a personal mantra I may apply is. But go ahead, Bill, and thanks. And then I see Paul. Thanks.
Yeah, this group and these experiences remind me of a song by Leonard Cohen, and the quote is, "All the sisters of mercy, they are not departed or gone. They were waiting for me when I thought that I just couldn't go on." In a sense, that's what this group is to me. So that's what came up for me.
Thank you, Paul. And thanks, Bill. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Angus. Yeah, I was really struck by the idea of fear as a destroyer of the earth and us and children's souls, and desire can't overcome it. And I thought of a something you've all heard of, a Course in Miracles, and I would say the primary thing that I got when I studied that is just the dichotomy between love and fear. It all breaks down to that. These are expressed in so many different ways, but that really occurred, love and fear, that occurred to me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really feeling that, because even around the check-ins, for myself, I know what it feels like for many years. Like, I only started to get real true support for what my lived experiences were within the last 2 and 3 years. Leading up to that, I was carrying it all internally, and any time I was seeking support, it was never clear to the outside world because of how I was presenting in those moments. Because for me in the beginning, it was anger, it was irrational behavior, it was blame and lashing, because I was so hurt. So yeah, I appreciate that. It's, for me, it brings it back to any move that I'm going to make. what am I leading with? And if I'm leading with fear, then am I just leading with anxiety? Or am I predicting? Am I making judgments? So thank you for that. And Eugenia?
Thank you, Angus, and everybody. It's well, what we're saying, and this goes along with Linda's meditation early on, coming from the heart, when we come from love. And I have to remind myself of that because I can be very judgmental. And when I start to say something, it's to remind myself to bring it back. How is it when I come from my heart as opposed to from my head? And this, again, the synchronicity just goes through everything. And I'm grateful. It takes me, I have the fear of saying, of feeling not enough. And I'm working on that and coming from love for myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Michael.
What came up is, I can't say children because it's, or even family. It's just that my whole life since my late 20s has been a learning dialogue with first my kids and then their kids. And it's just a synergy. I can't even really break it down much from that because Nick was born when I was 29 and Alexis 3 years later. And then just this Father's Day, they called me and we ended up having really wonderful conversation about where they are now. And which is sort of like she's an engineer working on, they're breaking up the San Onofre nuclear power plant. She's working on that. And he's working as a teacher with high school kids and stuff. But we have these great conversations, and now their kids come and stay and have conversations with them. And it's not a one-way street. I mean, I learn a lot from them. And it gives shape to life. It's a very hard thing to break down and say, well, are you learn you learn and you grow because of who they are, what they bring to you. And it's just constant. It's a constant formative experience. And so I guess as you were talking, the two of you, about your relationship, because in some ways family relationships are not different. They are what they are, And I just thought about how my family relationship is very much like that. So that's what I can bring to it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Carolyn?
Good morning. I have two thoughts on this most effective number 46, Tao Te Ching. One is the larger, more worldly thought. Fear is a destroyer. That was a really potent phrase and true. And that I have to remember that anyone who's coming from fear is anyone who does something that's destroying, including pushing fear, is coming from fear themselves, that their fear is life or death, pretty much, usually, and it comes down to the bottom of it. And because they feel that they need to control something in order to be able to feel good themselves and feel safe. So you have to have, down the line, I feel that I want to have compassion for those who out of their own fear, push fear and push control, because they're really terribly themselves. And personally, I find that fairly often I don't want to do something, or I have to do something, and I don't like the idea of it, and I say, okay, Caroline, you're not feeling love, so you must be feeling fear. So what are you afraid of? So I become aware of how I'm feeling. I ask myself what I'm afraid of, and then I pretty much find out. And it's really neat because then I get knowledge and relief. So we can deal with our fear when we acknowledge it and find out, what is the real truth of this uh, story that I'm telling myself. Okay. Oh,
Mhm. I really appreciate that, because for myself, I have 5 key concepts that I try to focus on in my own wellness, and one of them is hope, and the other one is personal responsibility, right? And for me, to me, I always have to have hope. I always have to see the hope in any situation, because that helps me unlock and unhinge from the judgment that my own fear might be making in the moment. And then personal responsibility is, how am I applying what my role in any situation is, and then how can I apply that to other folks? And what I notice is, sometimes when people react in fear, they tend to point the finger outwards. But we're all having a human experience with each other, and so we all have a part to play in that. And I think the balance is looking for what that looks like through mutuality, right? The other thing that comes up for me as well is, when we're dealing with people who are in their reality, and sometimes people who have mental health disorders and challenges, they're in a far different reality. If they're reacting in that fear, if they're blaming, if they're coming across as overly emotional or aggressive, how much do we need to hold them to that in that moment? Or how quickly can we depersonalize what's going on, so that we can just be a support to that situation to see it come to resolve, and then repersonalize through empathy and through love and through unconditional high regard and all of those things, because that's the thing, as being connected on this planet, is that we've all sort of been there at some time, and it's easy to find a place of compassion and love if we can just find a place within us where that fear that we're seeing resides, as opposed to taking on the fear. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm seeing Dana.
Thank you, Angus. It's a pleasure to meet you. The underwriting notion for me about fear is that it not only undermines love, but it undermines trust. And it comes from a sense of lack, a sense that we don't have enough. We would be better off if something else were different than the way that we are, or that whoever it is that we think we ought to be is a better us than the one that we happen to inhabit right now. And when I began to work with Jonathan on our recordings, I would say you can dress fear up as doubt, because we didn't know where we were going with this when we started. And it was one of those blessings that has been life transforming, I think, for both of us. And I've been deeply touched by how this group has embraced it such that they want to play one of these recordings in every one of our gatherings on a weekly basis. And when we get to the end, we start over again. And that's really very affirming. This has been a very affirming project for me. But in the same way that I feel connected to Jonathan and the project, the whole nature of the content of everything that we're doing connects me to everything, and it allows me to trust everything and to have no fear about wherever it is that we want to go and whatever it is that we think we want to do. So it becomes a metaphor or a game plan for how to navigate through my day, through my life. And so I've been very grateful for Jonathan, and I love how you brought it back in so we get to hear him a second time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. I want to share a personal connection with that. So at the time that I first heard these videos, I had no idea what the Tao, like it just wasn't on my radar whatsoever at the time in my wellness. And it was because it was Jonathan's voice that I started to listen to those. And because of my trust and love for Jonathan, after seeing him for hours and hours and hours being exactly who he is, I was able to then have a tool that would allow me to sleep better, because I would just play those videos one after another. I was able to sit still longer and for longer periods of time because I would just let the video play, and because I could trust that that material wasn't going to hurt me. So I'm personally very thankful for the work that you put into that. And I've seen groups of people who reject spirituality altogether or reject any notion that they don't fully understand, be able to sit and listen and then connect through this type of exchange with material that they wouldn't even give the time of day to otherwise. So to me, it's quite beautiful when we can create things or co-create things that can then plant seeds all over the place, right? And it was great because even this meeting today, having Jonathan and I come together in this, came from Jonathan seeing me put together a mindfulness group for another group of people, and then me saying to him, well, what if we did this with the Tao? And then that's how he linked to, well, someone's already doing it, so let's invite you into that. So I think it's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, we had the same situation when I heard his voice in this, and I had peripherally been exposed to the Tao Te Ching, but I certainly would not have undertaken the ambitious project of interpreting all the 81 verses. On another note, I will say that as a result of having recorded all of those with Jonathan and the response, I've been encouraged to develop it into a book, and that it is now about to go to press with that. And it's got articles in it and essays and a foreword and an introduction. And I mean, I'm not really prepared to go and become an author. I make stuff for people, but I don't put out anything myself. But it came from his voice. I mean, he resonated in just a moment of sharing something in this group. And I kind of like caught myself sitting back. I go, my God, he's the voice of the Tao Te Ching. And that's the way it started.
Yeah. I can definitely appreciate that. And I just want to, be mindful of time as well, because Jonathan selected a video that he'd like to share. It's a few minutes. But then I want to invite folks. So far, we checked in with what was present right? We all experienced number 63 of the Tao, and then Sarah
26.
and then Sarah linked us into, what was that one, Jonathan, that we just did?
46.
46. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear from folks, like, how was this experience? So just this portion of time that we shared this morning. Is
We
there
have about 6 to 7 minutes left, Angus.
Okay, perfect. Is there something you learned or relearned? And if you have an action that you can take today, so what are you going to do today for self-care? And even just anything with gratitude. And I'll put the link to the video in the chat so that if we miss it, we'll still get it.
Melanie.
Well, I have to say I'm thankful for this session. I mean, this would be what I would do every week. I'd have you guys lead this or have somebody talk and people react and share their growth or their, their reaction. I mean, let's just say we can't get enough, Jonathan, in our 2 hours here any week. And Angus, it's wonderful to have you with us and leading this. I feel grateful to just have you be at the helm. You have a very reassuring and comforting presence and style, much like Jonathan. And I just want to say thank you. Been great.
I feel very complimented. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Ms. Jenny.
Yes, thank you so much to both of you for your journey, for sharing. And as I share about my friend's brother, I just send them an email and telling them to reach you or to Tom, because I feel that every little good that we can do, let us do it now, let us not regret it, for we shall not pass this way again. I really so love this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ms. Linda.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about being in this group for a long time and getting a lot of help from this group in the early days. I know my sister was very ill and everybody here stepped up and helped me with that. And that was really great. And I've had other challenges that everyone here has been very noble. And after my sister died, I took up meditation, which I've been doing for about 15 years. And that has really separated my mind from my heart. I mean, I can look at different parts of my body without the mind going crazy. And that's been a very big blessing for me. But I do some volunteer work at Homeboys, which is a place that helps people who are in prison, in gangs, and addicted. And I have about 40 people that come into my class. And I know Tim helps me with that, Tim Peering. And when I walk into that class, I just see beautiful hearts, beautiful hearts. I mean, they have tattoos everywhere, but I don't see those and I don't see where they've been. I just see who they are. And I think that that's everything.
Thank you. I just want to, I see you, Tim, and then I just want to share one of the things that I do in these groups when I'm in with Jonathan is I like to sketch and write things down and what comes to mind. So I just love to share. I created this in our time together.
Nice.
And I called it the Gong Show. And I jotted down, everyone is a heart keeper. Tend to the small things, shift and accept, learn from those who are wise. Nothing is wasted. Be fluid and adaptable. Let it shine, and heart wealth. And just wanted to say thank you to everybody. And Tim, go ahead and share. Thank you.
Yes, Thomas Griggs mentioned about coming into the now, and then Jonathan talked about everything disappeared. And I wanted to share a little story. I was on a week-long retreat with a Tibetan Rinpoche, and we had an opportunity to go sit in front of him. And I had a list of questions that I was going to ask him. And I went and I sat in front of him, and everything disappeared. There was like, I was just sitting there and there were no questions. You know, it was like the presence just drew me into the now. And so all of a sudden, what came to me was, I mentioned that I was helping down at Homeboys, and it was a place with criminals and gang members and that sort of thing. And what could I do? And he said, take my teachings, repackage them, and then give them to the Homeboys. I was so humbled and honored. It was like when I got out of myself and my questions and thought about how I could serve these others, all of a sudden he gave me permission to take everything he has. How rare is that? And to repackage it to help raise these people up. So there's just something about being pulled into the moment, into this presence, where all of a sudden right action and high action appears. And Linda just mentioning Homeboys made me think of that, and Thomas Griggs and Jonathan about everything disappears. All of a sudden now you're in a different field. And if you come with a high intention, miracles happen.
We are now at time, so thank you for that transition, Tim. That was a perfect segue. Angus, do you want to wrap it up then?
I'd love to give Jonathan the last word because I feel like I used up all the other ones.
That's fine.
But I'd love to say thank you. I came into the room very excited about the connections I was already making, especially to our friend who recently lost his loved one, his Bassett. That was one of the things that Jonathan really did for me at a time when I had a 12-year-old one-eyed Bassett that was taking up all of my time. He really helped me process the grief that I was feeling in real time. So my heart goes out. But yeah, I made so many connections internally today that I know that I'll take all of this with me and be using it to just energize and just radiate and just be, right? And you know, it's like we saw the opening to the group that you have normally, and then we saw where Jonathan and I kind of repackaged it for the way that we present things. These are great tools to connect with just about anybody, being able to check in, see where they're at, defining what page they're on, finding out what's coming up for people, and then just applying all the connections we make in our hearts, and then checking out in wellness together. And you know, that's how I feel like I go from a human being to a human doing and a human connecting, right? So I just really appreciate everybody.
Enough words.